his teeth, and a feeling came over him that began at his toes and ended in his hair, a feeling of pure unhappiness, so that he looked himself over to be sure that he had not trod on a thorn. More cried the new smells, the other birds took it over, and from the rocks by the Wengunga he heard Bagheera's hoarse scream, something between the scream of an eagle and the neighing of a horse. There was a yelling and scattering of bandalog in the new budding branches above, and there stood Mowgli, his chest filled to answer more, sinking in little gasps as the breath was driven out of it by this unhappiness. He stared all around him, but he could see no more than the mocking bandalog scudding through the trees, and more, his tail spread in full splendor, dancing on the slopes below. "The smells have changed," screamed More. "Good hunting, little brother." "Where is thy answer?" "Little brother, good hunting," whistled Chill the Kite and his mate, swooping down together. The two baffed under Mowgli's nose so close that a pinch of downy white feathers brushed away. A light spring rain, elephant rain as they call it, drove across the jungle in a belt half a mile wide, left the new leaves wet and nodding behind, and died out in a double rainbow and a light roll of thunder. The spring hum broke out for a minute and was silent, but all the jungle folk seemed to be giving tongue at once, all except Mowgli. "I have eaten good food," he said to himself. "I have drunk good water. Nor does my throat burn and grow small, as it did when I bit the blue-spotted root that Oo the turtle said was clean food. But my stomach is heavy, and I have given very bad talk to Bagheera and the others, people of the jungle, and my people. Now, too, I am hot, and now I am cold, and now I am neither hot nor cold, but angry with that which I cannot see. Hoo-hoo! It is time to make a running. Tonight I will cross the ranges. Yes, I will make a spring running to the marshes of the north and back again. I have hunted too easily too long. The four shall come with me, for they grow as fat as white grubs." He called, but never one of the four answered. They were far beyond earshot, singing over the spring songs, the moon and sambar songs, with the wolves of the pack, for in the springtime the jungle people make very little difference between the day and the night. He gave the sharp barking note, but his only answer was the mocking meow of the little spotted tree cat, winding in and out among the branches for early birds' nests. At this he shook all over with rage and half drew his knife. Then he became very haughty, though there was no one to see him, and stalked severely down the hillside, chin up and eyebrows down. But never a single one of his people asked him a question, for they were all too busy with their own affairs. "Yes," said Mowgli to himself, though in his heart he knew that he had no reason. "Let the red dhole come from the Deccan, or the red flower dance among the bamboos, and all the jungle runs whining to Mowgli, calling him great elephant names. But now, because Eye of Spring is red, and More, forsooth, must show his naked legs in some spring dance, the jungle goes mad as Tapaqui. By the bull that bought me, am I the master of the jungle, or am I not? Be silent! What do ye here?" A couple of young wolves of the pack were cantering down a path, looking for open ground in which to fight. You will remember that the law of the jungle forbids fighting where the pack can see. Their neck bristles were as stiff as wire, and they bayed furiously, crouching for the first grapple. Mowgli leaped forward, caught one outstretched throat in either hand, expecting to fling the creatures backwards as he had often done in games or pack hunts. But he had never before interfered with a spring fight. The two leaped forward and dashed him aside, and without word to waste rolled over and over, close-locked. Mowgli was on his feet almost before he fell, his knife and his white teeth were bared, and at that minute he would have killed both for no reason but that they were fighting when he wished them to be quiet, although every wolf has full right under the law to fight. He danced round them with lowered shoulders and quivering hand, ready to send in a double blow when the first flurry of the scuffle should be over. But while he waited, the strength seemed to ebb from his body, the knife point lowered, and he sheathed the knife and watched. "I have surely eaten poison," he sighed at last. "Since I broke up the council with the Red Flower, since I killed Shere Khan, none of the pack could fling me aside. And these be only tail wolves of the packs, little hunters. My strength is gone from me, and presently I shall die. Oh, Mowgli, why dost thou not kill them both?" The fight went on till one wolf ran away, and Mowgli was left alone on the torn and bloody ground, looking now at his knife, and now at his legs and arms, while the feeling of unhappiness he had never known before covered him as a water covers a log. He killed early that evening and ate but little, so as to be in good fettle for his spring running, and he ate alone because all the jungle people were away singing or fighting. It was a perfect white night, as they call it. All green things seemed to have made a month's growth since the morning. The branch that was yellow-leaved the day before dripped sap when Mowgli broke it. The mosses curled deep and warm over his feet. The young grass had no cutting edges, and all the voices of the jungle boomed like one deep harp string touched by the moon of new talk, who splashed her light full on rock and pool, slipped it between trunk and creeper, and sifted it through a million leaves. Forgetting his unhappiness, Mowgli sang aloud with pure delight as he settled into his stride. It was more like flying than anything else, for he had chosen the long, downward slope that leads to the northern marshes through the heart of the main jungle, where the springy ground deadened the fall of his feet. A man-taught man would have picked his way with many stumbles through the cheating moonlight, but Mowgli's muscles, trained by years of experience, bore him up as though he were a feather. When a rotten log or a hidden stone turned under his foot, he saved himself, never checking his pace, without effort and without thought. When he tired of ground going, he threw up his hands monkey fashion to the nearest creeper, and seemed to float rather than to climb up into the thin branches, whence he would follow a tree road till his mood changed, and he shot downward in a long leafy curve to the levels again. There were still hot hollows surrounded by wet rocks where he could hardly breathe for the heavy scents of the night flowers and the bloom along the creeper buds, dark avenues where the moonlight lay in belts as regular as checkered marbles in a church aisle, thickets where the wet young growth stood breast-high about him and threw its arms round his waist, and hilltops crowned with broken rock, where he leaped from stone to stone above the lairs of the frightened little foxes. He would hear, very faint and far off, the chug-drug of a boar sharpening his tusks on a bole, and would come across the great grey brute all alone, scribing and rending the bark of a tall tree, his mouth dripping with foam and his eyes blazing with fire. Or he would turn aside to the sound of clashing horns and hissing grunts, and dash past a couple of furious Sambor, staggering to and fro with lowered heads, striped with blood that showed black in the moonlight. Or at some rushing ford he would hear Jacala the crocodile bellowing like a bull, or disturb a twined knot of the poison people, but before they could strike he would be away and across the glistening shingle, and deep in the jungle again. So he ran, sometimes shouting, sometimes singing to himself, the happiest thing in all the jungle that night, till the smell of the flowers warned him that he was near the marshes, and those lay far beyond his farthest hunting grounds. Here again, a man-trained man would have sunk overhead in 3 strides, but Mowgli's feet had eyes in them, and they passed him from tussock to tussock and clump to quaking clump, without asking help from the eyes in his head. He ran out to the middle of the swamp, disturbing the duck as he ran, and sat down on a moss-coated tree trunk lapped in the black water. The marsh was awake all around him, for in the spring the bird people sleep very lightly, and companies of them were coming or going the night through. But no one took any notice of Mowgli sitting among the tall reeds humming songs without words, and looking at the soles of his hard brown feet in case of neglected thorns. All his unhappiness seemed to have been left behind in his own jungle, and he was just beginning a full-throat song when it came back again, 10 times worse than before. This time Mowgli was frightened. "It is here also," he said half aloud. "It has followed me," and he looked over his shoulder to see whether the "it" were not standing behind him. There is no one here. The night noises of the marsh went on, but never a bird or beast spoke to him, and the new feeling of misery grew. "I have surely eaten poison," he said in an awe-stricken voice. "It must be that carelessly I have eaten poison, and my strength is going from me. I was afraid, and yet it was not I that was afraid. Mowgli was afraid when the 2 wolves fought. Akela, or even Phao, would have silenced them, yet Mowgli was afraid. That is true sign I have eaten poison. But what do they care in the jungle? They sing and howl and fight and run in companies under the moon, and hi my, I am dying in the marshes of that poison which I have eaten." He was so sorry for himself that he nearly wept. "And after," he went on, "they will find me lying in the black water. Nay, I will go back to my own jungle, and I will die upon the Council Rock, and Bagheera, whom I love, if he is not screaming in the valley, Bagheera, perhaps, may watch by what